If you teleported an ancient tropical tree to a freezing Siberian winter, it would be an absolute massacre. The ice crystals would act like tiny knives, shredding its cells from the inside. But surprisingly, freezing leaves is the least of its problems. I literally spend dozens of hours researching these bizarre evolutionary quirks, so hitting the like button goes a really long way. 250 million years ago, a winter frost would have caused a mass extinction. Every single tree on Earth was built exclusively for the boiling hot tropics. If you teleported an ancient tropical tree to a freezing Siberian winter, it would be an absolute massacre. The water inside its delicate leaves would rapidly freeze into jagged ice crystal. These ice knives would fatally puncture the living cells from the inside out. It's the exact same explosion that turns a frozen head of lettuce into dead, black mush. But here's where it gets crazy. Frozen leaves are actually the least of a tree's worries in the cold. The real lethal danger happens deep inside the tree's internal plumbing. Trees pull massive amounts of water upward against gravity. They rely entirely on water molecules holding hands in an unbroken chain of tension. But liquid water naturally hides tiny amounts of dissolved, invisible air. When winter strikes, the water inside the tree's massive vertical pipes freezes solid. As the water turns to ice, those dissolved gases are violently squeezed out. They form highly pressurized, dangerous air bubbles trapped inside the ice. Surprisingly, the ice itself doesn't hurt the sturdy wooden pipe. The deadly problem strikes in the spring, when the ice thaws back into liquid. The water melts, but the giant air bubbles remain stubbornly trapped. These bubbles completely sever the chain of holding water molecules. The tension snaps, the water plummets back down to the root. The entire plumbing system shuts off. The massive tree quickly dies of thirst, while standing in a puddle of melted snow. To survive migrating north, trees had to solve this impossible plumbing problem. But scientists discovered something shocking. Trees actually solved the winter bubble problem millions of years before they ever saw snow. Air bubbles aren't just caused by freezing ice. They are also caused by blistering, brutal droughts. When soil goes bone dry, a tree has to suck incredibly hard to pull up moisture. This extreme suction accidentally pulls tiny pockets of air right through the solid wood walls. To combat drought, ancient tropical trees evolved a genius physical trick. They built much skinnier, narrower internal pipes. Thanks to fluid dynamics, these tiny pipes develop far fewer catastrophic air blockages. Their fat-piped rainforest cousins would quickly choke on air and die in a desert, but the drought-adapted trees survived perfectly with their narrow plumbing, which means their ancestral plumbing was accidentally pre-adapted for freezing temperatures. Millions of years before leaving the blazing tropics, they already had the pipes built for the Arctic. Armed with these Arctic-ready pipes, trees marched northward, but they still had to face the frozen, shredded leaf problem. And their solution is something you probably eat for breakfast. Upon hitting the cold, trees evolved two completely distinct survival techniques. Technique 1. Biological anti-freeze. Trees began aggressively pumping their living leaf cells full of concentrated sugar. Just like throwing thick salt on an icy road, which drastically lowers the freezing point of the water inside the leaf. Evergreen conifers, like towering pines and spruces, rely almost entirely on this method. They pump extreme amounts of sugar into their tough, needle-like leaves. This super strong anti-freeze keeps their leaves fully active all winter long. They can literally photosynthesize sunlight while buried under 10 feet of snow. But other species, like maples and birches, took a completely different path. They use a much weaker sugar mixture. Instead, they combine this mild anti-freeze with the drastic strategy of giving up. Before bitter winter hits, they sever the connections to their leaves. They let every single leaf fall to the forest floor. By going completely leafless, they effortlessly sidestep foliar frostbite. They enter a deep, dormant hibernation. For millions of years, leaf dropping was strictly a cold-beating adaptation. But eventually, some of these highly evolved trees migrated back down south. They moved right back into the dry tropics where their ancestors came from, and they realized that dropping leaves is an incredible survival trick for extreme heat. In monsoonal climates with brutal dry seasons, leaves lose massive amounts of water to evaporation. By dropping them, the tree stops losing water instantly. It easily survives the scorching dry season. Today, dropping leaves works just as perfectly in a tropical drought as a winter blizzard, but as far as scientists know, the super sugary anti-freeze sap remains entirely unique. It is the only adaptation that is exclusively useful in freezing environments, which is exactly why you have to travel to the snowy, freezing northern forests. If you want to tap a tree trunk and extract that sweet, life-saving biological antifreeze, a magical survival liquid that we humans prefer to pour over our pancake. We just call it maple syrup.